I'm 82 years old, and I've never been more shocked in my life. My son Robert and his wife Victoria were planning my funeral, thinking I was dying. But the real shock came when I heard the words coming out of their mouths. That day, I began planning the biggest revenge of my life. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. Trust me, you'll want to hear every word of this story. My name is William Thompson, but most people called me Judge Thompson for 40 years. I served on the Federal District Court in Boston, presiding over cases that shaped legal precedent across New England. I retired 10 years ago with a reputation for fairness, sharp legal mind, and absolutely no tolerance for lies or manipulation. My wife Eleanor passed away 5 years ago after 55 years of marriage. We built a comfortable life together in our colonial home in Beacon Hill, worth $4 million today. Along with my investment portfolio and other properties, my total estate is valued at just over $15 million. Our son Robert followed in my footsteps, becoming a successful attorney and partner at Morrison, Palmer & Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. He married Victoria, a woman from old Boston money who cares more about social status than substance. They have 2 children, Madison, 16, who attends Phillips Academy, and Tyler, 14, at Boston Latin. For the past 5 years since Eleanor's death, I've lived alone in our Beacon Hill home. I maintain my independence, drive myself to doctor appointments, manage my own finances, and stay mentally sharp by reading legal journals and playing chess at the Boston Men's Club. But I've noticed changes in my family's behavior, especially since my 82nd birthday last month. Robert and Victoria visit more frequently, but their conversations always seem to steer toward my health, my living situation, and subtle suggestions about planning for the future. Last Tuesday morning, I had what I thought was minor chest discomfort. Nothing dramatic, just a tightness that made me sit down for a few minutes. But when I mentioned it casually to Robert during our weekly check-in call, his reaction was immediate and intense. "Dad, you need to see Dr. Morrison right away. Chest pain at your age is nothing to ignore." "Robert, it was barely noticeable. Probably just indigestion from Mrs. Kelly's shepherd's pie." "Dad, promise me you'll call Dr. Morrison today. Promise me." The urgency in his voice seemed excessive for what amounted to mild discomfort, but I agreed to schedule an appointment to put his mind at ease. Dr. Hugh Morrison has been my physician for 15 years. He's thorough, honest, and treats me with the respect due to a man who's lived through 8 decades with his wits intact. "Judge Thompson, your EKG looks normal, your blood pressure is excellent for your age, and your overall health is remarkably good. The chest discomfort you describe sounds like acid reflux, possibly triggered by stress or dietary changes. So nothing to worry about? Nothing immediate. Your heart shows normal wear for an 82-year-old, but you're in better shape than most men 20 years younger. I'd recommend continuing your daily walks, perhaps adding some light stretching exercises, and avoiding spicy foods for a few weeks." I left Dr. Morrison's office feeling relieved and slightly foolish for Robert's overreaction, but when I called to give him the good news, his response surprised me. "Dad, are you sure, doctor? Morrison is being completely honest with you? Sometimes doctors don't want to worry elderly patients with bad news." "Robert, I've known Hugh Morrison for 15 years. He's not the type to sugarcoat anything, especially not with me." "Maybe you should get a second opinion. Victoria knows an excellent cardiologist at Mass General." "Robert, Dr. Morrison said I'm fine. The tests were normal." Dad, at your age, you can't be too careful. One minute you're fine, the next, well, things can change very quickly. The conversation left me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite identify. Robert seemed almost disappointed by my clean bill of health. Over the next few days, I noticed a pattern. Robert called twice daily to check on my condition. Victoria stopped by with homemade soup and lingered to ask detailed questions about my symptoms. Even Madison and Tyler, who usually showed little interest in their grandfather's health, began asking pointed questions about how I was feeling. "Grandpa, are you going to be okay?" Madison asked during their Sunday visit. "Of course, sweetheart. Why would you ask that?" "Mom and Dad have been talking about your heart problems." "What heart problems?" "Dr. Morrison said I'm fine." Madison looked confused. "But Mom said you might need to go to the hospital soon." That evening, after Robert's family left, I sat in my study thinking about Madison's words. Victoria had told the children I might need hospitalization, despite Dr. Morrison's clean report. Why would she plant that idea in their minds? The answer came sooner than I expected. Wednesday afternoon, I was napping in my study when I heard voices in the kitchen. Robert and Victoria had let themselves in using their spare key, apparently assuming I was asleep upstairs. Their conversation drifted clearly through the old house's thin walls. "Hugh Morrison is an old fool," Victoria was saying. "He's probably missing signs because he doesn't want to face the reality that his patients are dying." "Maybe Dad needs a different doctor," Robert replied. "Someone who will be more realistic about his prognosis." "Robert, your father is 82 years old. He lives alone in a $4 million house that's too big for him. He's had chest pains. He's clearly declining mentally. Remember how he forgot Tyler's birthday last month?" I sat up straighter. I hadn't forgotten Tyler's birthday. I'd been traveling to New York for a legal conference and called him from my hotel room. "Victoria, Dad seems pretty sharp to me." "That's what you want to see, honey, but I've noticed things. He repeats stories. He gets confused about dates. He left his car running in the driveway last week when I visited." This was news to me. I'd never left my car running, and my memory was as sharp as ever. Victoria was fabricating incidents. "What are you saying, Victoria?" "I'm saying that we need to start planning for the inevitable. Your father won't live forever, and when something happens, a fall, a heart attack, a stroke, we need to be prepared." "Prepared how?" "We need to know exactly what his will says. We need to understand his financial situation completely. And frankly, we need to start documenting his mental decline so there won't be any complications later." My blood ran cold. They weren't concerned about my health. They were planning for my death and calculating their inheritance. "Victoria, that sounds awful when you put it like that." "Robert, don't be naive. Your father has $15 million. When he dies, if his affairs aren't in order, if there are any questions about his mental competency in his final years, that money could be tied up in probate for years. We have Madison's college coming up, Tyler's education to think about. This house needs work. Your partnership track at the firm requires a certain lifestyle. So what do you suggest?" "We document everything. His forgetfulness, his physical decline, his increasing dependence on us. If he has another chest pain episode, we insist on hospitalization for observation. Hospitals create paper trails that establish medical concerns." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own son and daughter-in-law were scheming to build a case for my incompetency. "And if something serious does happen," Victoria continued, "we need to be ready to step in immediately. Power of attorney, medical decisions, Estate management. We can't let him make any major financial decisions if his judgment is compromised. Victoria, this conversation is making me uncomfortable. Robert, this is reality. Your father is old, he's wealthy, and he's our responsibility. But more importantly, he's Madison and Tyler's future. That money will pay for their education, their weddings, their first homes. We can't let sentiment cloud our judgment about what needs to be done. They left shortly after, but I remained in my study until well past midnight, processing what I'd learned. My family wasn't waiting for me to die. They were actively hoping for it and planning to profit from it. The next morning, I called my attorney, David Morrison, Dr. Morrison's son, who'd handled my legal affairs since his father's retirement. David, I need to discuss some changes to my will and estate planning. Of course, Judge Thompson. What kind of changes are you considering? I can't discuss it over the phone. Can you come to the house this afternoon? And David, I need complete confidentiality on this matter. Naturally, I'll be there at 2 p.m. David arrived promptly, briefcase in hand, and the same serious demeanor that made him an excellent attorney. I led him to my study and closed the door. David, what I'm about to tell you must remain between us until I say otherwise. Attorney-client privilege, Judge, you know that. I told him everything. The overheard conversation, Victoria's fabrications about my mental state, their obvious eagerness for my death and inheritance. David listened without interruption, taking notes and shaking his head at several points. Judge Thompson, what you're describing is unfortunately common in families with substantial wealth. Adult children begin viewing aging parents as financial obstacles rather than people. What are my options? Legally, you have complete control over your estate as long as you're mentally competent, which you clearly are. You can change your will, establish trusts, donate to charity, or leave everything to your cat if you choose. And if they try to challenge my mental competency, they'd need substantial medical evidence and testimony from credible witnesses. Your relationship with Dr. Morrison, your continued activity in legal circles, your management of your own affairs, all of that works in your favor. David, I want to do something that will teach them a lesson they'll never forget. What did you have in mind? I want to let them think I'm dying, let them show their true colors completely, and then reveal that I've been watching and listening to everything. That's creative and potentially very effective. What exactly are you proposing? I outlined my plan. David listened with growing amazement and occasional legal objections, but by the end of our meeting, he was smiling. Judge Thompson, this is either brilliant or completely insane, possibly both. Will you help me? I wouldn't miss it for the world. The following Monday morning, I put my plan into action. I called Robert at his office, making sure to sound weak and shaky. Robert, I need you to come over. I'm not feeling well. Dad, what's wrong? Should I call an ambulance? No ambulance. Just come quickly and bring Victoria. Within 30 minutes, Robert and Victoria burst through my front door to find me sitting in my armchair, looking pale and holding my chest dramatically. Dad, what happened? I woke up with terrible chest pain, much worse than last week. It comes and goes, but when it hits, I grimaced convincingly. Victoria immediately took charge. Robert, call Dr. Morrison. Tell him we're bringing your father in immediately. No, I said weakly. I don't want to be a bother. I'm sure it will pass. Dad, You're going to the doctor. No arguments. Perfect. They were reacting exactly as I'd hoped. At Dr. Morrison's office, I described symptoms carefully calculated to sound concerning, but not emergency threatening. Dr. Morrison, who was aware of my plan, played his part perfectly. Judge Thompson, your EKG shows some irregularities that weren't there last week. I want to run more comprehensive tests. Victoria leaned forward eagerly. What kind of irregularities? Possible signs of cardiac stress. At Judge Thompson's age, we need to take these symptoms very seriously. Robert looked worried. How serious are we talking? Let's get the test results first. But Judge, I want you to take it very easy for the next few days. No stress, lots of rest. And I want someone staying with you to monitor your condition. I'll stay with him, Victoria volunteered immediately. Robert, you have that deposition tomorrow. I can handle this. As we left the office, I caught Dr. Morrison's eye. He gave me an almost imperceptible wink. Victoria moved into my guest room, temporarily, to keep an eye on my condition. She was attentive and solicitous, bringing me meals, checking my temperature, and asking detailed questions about my symptoms. But I noticed other things too. She spent considerable time on the phone with someone, presumably Robert, discussing my condition in hushed tones. She explored my house more thoroughly than she ever had, paying particular attention to my study and the safe where I kept important documents. On Wednesday evening, she suggested we organize some paperwork in case of emergency. Bill, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but if something serious happens, Robert and I need to know where your important documents are. What kind of documents? Oh, your will, insurance policies, bank account information, just in case we need to help manage things if you're incapacitated. Victoria, I hope I'm not that close to being incapacitated. Of course not. But you know how hospitals are. They need information immediately, and we want to be prepared to help. I pretended to consider this reasonable request. I suppose that makes sense. My will is in the safe, and my financial information is in the filing cabinet. Could you show me where everything is, just so I know if there's an emergency? I led her to my study and opened the safe, revealing the current version of my will, the one that left everything to Robert and Victoria. I watched her face as she absorbed the information that she and her family would inherit $15 million. Bill, this is quite substantial. Eleanor and I were fortunate in our investments. We always intended for Robert and the children to be comfortable. I'm sure Robert will handle everything responsibly. That evening, I heard Victoria on the phone in the guest room. Robert, it's even more than we thought. 15 million, plus the house, plus some investments I couldn't see clearly. We need to make sure nothing jeopardizes this. Is Dad really as sick as he seems? Sick enough. And Robert, Doctor. Morrison seemed genuinely concerned about his heart condition. I don't think your father has very long. I smiled in the darkness. If only she knew how right and wrong she was at the same time. Thursday afternoon brought the conversation I'd been waiting for. Robert arrived with Madison and Tyler for what Victoria had described as a family meeting to discuss Grandpa's condition. I was resting in my study when I heard them gathering in the living room. Victoria's voice carried clearly through the house. Kids, Grandpa is very sick. We need to talk about some difficult things. Is Grandpa going to die? Tyler asked in a small voice. We don't know, sweetheart, but we need to be prepared for anything. That's what grown-ups do. We plan ahead so we can take care of everyone. What kind of plans? Madison asked. Well, if something happens to Grandpa, there will be a lot of decisions to make quickly. About the funeral, about his house, about making sure you kids are taken care of. Robert's voice joined the conversation. Victoria, maybe we shouldn't discuss this here. Robert, they're old enough to understand reality, and frankly, we need their help. Our help with what? Madison asked. Madison, you and Tyler have been wonderful to Grandpa over the years. He loves you very much, and he's left money for your education and your futures. But if anything happens to him, we need to make sure everything goes smoothly. What do you mean? Tyler pressed. I mean that if Grandpa gets very sick or confused, we might need you to tell doctors and lawyers how much he loves you, how much he wants to take care of your futures. Sometimes when old people get sick, other people try to take advantage of them. I realized Victoria was coaching my grandchildren to provide testimony about my intentions, establishing their claims to inheritance. But Grandpa seems fine to me, Madison said. I mean, he's tired, but he's still smart. Sweetie, sometimes old people seem fine on the outside, but they're very sick inside. And sometimes they get confused and might say things that don't make sense. If that happens, we need to remember what Grandpa really wanted, for all of us to be taken care of. The conversation continued for another hour, with Victoria systematically planting ideas about my declining health, my wishes for their futures, and the importance of protecting Grandpa's intentions. But the real bomb dropped when Tyler asked innocently, "What will Grandpa's funeral be like when he dies?" We need to plan for that too, Victoria said. The kind of funeral Grandpa would want. Dignified, respectful, worthy of his memory. Will it be expensive? Madison asked. Madison, money isn't important in situations like this, Robert said. We'll celebrate Grandpa's life properly. Actually, Victoria interjected, Grandpa's money will become all of our futures. So funeral expenses would come from that money too. I'm sure Grandpa would want that. How much money? Tyler asked directly. Silence. Then Victoria. A lot of money, Tyler. Much more than enough for your and Madison's college. Enough for all of us. So we'll be rich when Grandpa dies? Madison asked. Madison, don't talk like that, Robert scolded, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it true, though? Madison persisted. Grandpa is rich, and when he dies, his money comes to us. A long silence. Then Victoria. Madison, Grandpa's money will secure our family's future. Your education, Tyler's education, a beautiful home for us, nice vacations. Grandpa wanted these things. So when will it happen? Tyler asked. When will Grandpa die? Wait. Tyler, Robert shouted. What? Everyone's talking about it. I want to know too. Victoria took a deep breath. Tyler, we don't know, but Dr. Morrison seemed very worried about Grandpa's heart. It might not be very long. At that moment, my heart really did stop. They weren't just planning for my money. They were planning for my death. And they were teaching my grandchildren to see this as normal. That night, after they left, I sat in my study processing what I'd heard. They weren't just unwilling to have me around alive and well. They were actively teaching my grandchildren to see me as a dead man's money. Friday morning, I called David. David, we need to accelerate the plan. I've learned things are even worse than I thought. What did you learn? They're not just planning for my money, they're planning for my death. and they're teaching my grandchildren to see this as normal. Judge Thompson, this is very serious. What do you want to do? Next week, I'll stage the big crisis. You need to have the new will ready. Everything needs to be prepared. Who's going to be in the new will? Robert and Victoria get nothing. Madison and Tyler will have education funds, but managed by an independent trust, not under their parents' control. The rest goes to Boston Children's Hospital. And the special surprise, that's the best part. Oh, that afternoon, I finalized the details with Dr. Morrison. Monday morning would be the big crisis. Monday morning at 6:30 a.m., I called Robert, making my voice genuinely weak and breathless. Robert, I'm very bad. Can't breathe. Chest. Dad, I'm coming right now. I'm calling an ambulance. No, just come quickly. 15 minutes later, Robert and Victoria were at my house. They found me on the floor, in a position that suggested difficulty breathing. Victoria immediately called an ambulance. Robert, this looks serious this time, Victoria said, but there was excitement in her voice. At the hospital, Dr. Morrison examined me. As planned, the tests showed concerning but stable results. There are serious irregularities in his heart rhythm, Dr. Morrison told the family. We need to keep Judge Thompson under observation. The situation is critical. Victoria's eyes lit up. How critical? The next 24 to 48 hours are very important. If the heart rhythm doesn't stabilize, we understand, Robert said quietly. While lying unconscious in the hospital room, I could hear them talking in the corridor. Robert, this could be the opportunity, Victoria was saying. What do you mean? The doctor said the situation is critical. If ... Victoria, don't talk like that. Robert, let's be realistic. If he doesn't make it through this time, we need to be prepared. That night, while lying in my coma, I listened to them planning my future. Tuesday, my condition worsened further. Dr. Morrison gathered the family. Unfortunately, Judge Thompson's condition has reached a critical stage. You may need to start making preparations. What kind of preparations? Victoria asked. If you want to say goodbye, now would be the time. And practical matters. Victoria immediately went into organizational mode. What kind of practical matters? Funeral arrangements, legal documents, things like that. That evening, they came for their goodbye visit. But what they mainly discussed was funeral organization. Dad should have a dignified funeral in Boston, Robert said. Of course, Victoria said. All his judge friends, colleagues from the bar, a proper ceremony. What will it cost? Madison asked. Madison, funeral expenses are paid from the estate, Victoria said. Grandpa's money is for things like this. Tyler asked quietly, how long after Grandpa dies before the money comes to us? Robert was uncomfortable. Tyler, don't ask things like that. Why not? Victoria said. There's value in being realistic. The will reading is after the funeral. Money transfers take a few weeks. When can we get a new house? Madison asked. Madison! Robert shouted. What? You wanted that new house too. You talked about that penthouse in Back Bay. Robert fell silent. Because it was true. Victoria smiled. We can start planning our new life in a month or two. Wednesday was my final day. Dr. Morrison gathered the family one last time. I'm sorry, but Judge Thompson's condition is terminal, maybe a few hours. Robert started crying, but I wasn't sure if this was real grief or acting. Victoria focused on practical matters. Doctor, what do we need to do when he passes? Contact the funeral home. There are various documents. Is there someone who can help us with these things? Dr. Morrison indicated a nurse. Nurse Williams is experienced with these matters. Victoria immediately got Nurse Williams' contact information for the funeral director. That evening, after they left, Dr. Morrison came to see me. Judge Thompson, tomorrow is the big day. Are you ready? I'm ready. Has David arranged everything? Yes. Tomorrow afternoon, the new will reading. And your special surprise is ready too. Perfect. Thursday morning at 10 a.m., my family came for the final goodbye. While I lay unconscious, I heard them discussing post-funeral plans. The funeral will be Saturday, Victoria said. Will reading Monday. What will we do first with Grandpa's money? Tyler asked. First the new house, then cars, Victoria said. What happens to Grandpa's house? Madison asked. We'll sell it, Robert said. It's worth $4 million. Too big for us. At noon, Dr. Morrison came and gave the bad news. Unfortunately, we lost Judge Thompson. He passed at 12:30 p.m. Robert started crying loudly. Victoria hugged him, but there was a look of triumph in her eyes. Doctor, what do we need to do now? Victoria asked immediately. While they dealt with paperwork, I left the hospital through the back exit. The plan was working perfectly. Friday, I heard Victoria talking to the funeral director. I want the best casket. Judge Thompson was a very respected judge. Cost doesn't matter, it'll be paid from the estate. We have a good ceremony package for $15,000, said the director. What do you have for $25,000? Premium package, more luxurious ceremony hall, flower arrangements, catering. We'll take that. I heard Robert talking to his friend. Robert, I'm sorry for your father's passing. Thank you. It's a difficult time, but honestly, Dad was 82. He lived a long and good life. How are the inheritance matters? Will reading Monday, but there's nothing to worry about. Everything stays with us. How much are we talking about? Around 15 million. We can finally breathe easy. Saturday. I secretly attended the funeral. I sat in the back rows, dressed differently so no one would recognize me. Victoria played the grieving widow role perfectly. Robert also gave the image of a son carrying the heavy burden of grief. But after the funeral ceremony, I heard them talking in the car. Victoria, that was a great performance. Thank you. Monday we'll reading, then our new life begins. How are the kids? They're excited too. Madison wants a new iPhone. Tyler wants a PlayStation 5. They deserve it. Now we can give them whatever they want. Monday afternoon, the entire family gathered in David's office. Robert, Victoria, Madison, and Tyler, all eager to learn about the big inheritance. David began speaking with a serious expression. Dear family, I'm beginning to read Judge Thompson's will. However, there's an important detail I must mention first. What kind of detail? Victoria asked. This will was changed last week, during Judge Thompson's final days. Victoria's face went white. What do you mean changed? Judge Thompson, while completely mentally competent, prepared a new will. David began reading. I, William Thompson, in full mental capacity, arrange my final will as follows. To my son, Robert Thompson, and daughter-in-law, Victoria Thompson. I heard you planning my death and dividing my money while I was still alive. I leave you nothing. Robert froze. This is impossible. Dad was confused from illness. David continued, "For my grandchildren, Madison and Tyler, education funds are protected but will be managed by an independent foundation, not under their parents' supervision. My remaining $15 million is donated to Boston Children's Hospital." Victoria screamed, "This isn't legal." The man was sick, he was confused. David smiled. Actually, Judge Thompson wasn't confused at all, and we have a very special surprise to prove it. David pressed a button and video footage began playing on the office screen. On the screen, I appeared, healthy and completely mentally competent. Dear family, if you're watching this video, it means my death was successful. Robert's mouth fell open. I continued in the video. Last week, I listened to you planning my death and funeral. You discussed how to divide my money, which house to buy, how to buy luxury items for the children. Victoria started trembling. Robert, you're my own son, but you saw me as a burden. Victoria, you saw me only as a source of money. And worst of all, you taught my grandchildren to see me as their dead grandfather's money. That's why I left you nothing. My money will go to children who really need it. The video reached an even more shocking part. And now I'm revealing the biggest surprise. I didn't die. I'm in this room, right now, with you. The office door opened and I walked in. The expressions on my family's faces were priceless. Robert looked like he might faint. Victoria started screaming. Madison and Tyler were frozen in shock. "Hello," I said calmly. "How was my funeral?" There was a long silence. Then Robert began to speak. "Dad, how? Very simple. I wanted to see your true faces. And I saw them." Victoria became furious. "This is so cruel. How could you deceive us like this?" Cruel? Victoria, you were planning which house to buy after my funeral expenses. Who's being cruel? Robert began pleading. "Dad, please. You misunderstood. We were just what, Robert? Just waiting for my death? Just planning to divide my $15 million? Madison started crying. "Grandpa, we love you." Madison, you said you wanted a PlayStation 5. With my money. You didn't love me. You loved my money. Victoria made one last attempt. "Judge Thompson, this will is invalid. You were sick. The doctor said you were in critical condition." Dr. Morrison entered the room. Actually, Judge Thompson was never sick. I was part of this plan too. Victoria collapsed. "You all conspired against us." "No," I said. "I just revealed the truth. You were the ones conspiring against me." Robert tried pleading one last time. "Dad, please. We made mistakes, we're sorry. But we're your family. Take back this money, let's make everything like it was before." Robert, I'm 82 years old. I don't know how many years I have left, but I won't spend my remaining time trying to please you. So what will we do? This money was our future. Robert, you're a 54-year-old successful lawyer. If you can't provide for your own family, that's not my problem. Victoria shouted, "This isn't fair. That money was our right." Victoria, your only right was being married to my son. That didn't give you rights to my money. David intervened. "If you have objections, you can apply to court. But Judge Thompson's mental state is completely clearly documented." 6 months have passed. Robert and Victoria actually did apply to court, but achieved nothing. In fact, court costs brought them additional burden. Victoria divorced Robert and returned to her family. Robert moved to a more modest house and is trying to reorganize his life. Madison and Tyler's education funds are protected. They visit me occasionally, now looking at me with different eyes. When the money was gone, they began to understand what real love was. I still live in my Beacon Hill house, but I'm not alone anymore. The $15 million I donated allowed Boston Children's Hospital to establish a new cardiac surgery unit. When I visit this unit, I see money that truly saves lives. And most importantly, no one sees me just as a source of money anymore, because I have no money left to give away. Sometimes the greatest wealth is knowing who truly loves you. And sometimes the only way to learn this is to pretend you've lost your fortune. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Click the box on the left to listen to the next story. Remember, real family is understood through unconditional respect, not conditional love. And sometimes the greatest inheritance is the lessons you leave behind penniless,